as a commencement speaker. I did, however, sleep at a Holiday Inn Express last night. It was in Brooklyn, New York, at 1 a.m. after my flight from my favorite airline was canceled without any regard to where I needed to be today. And I think you've all heard the ad campaign that suggests you'll have a restful night and you will accomplish great physical and mental achievements just by the rest gathered in Holiday Inn Express. So while this may be my first commencement speech, I have the benefit of the greatest hotel chain in America. Now, when I was an undergraduate and a graduate student, I had the opportunity to attend 3 different commencement ceremonies. I declined one, 2 of which I attended. I can remember where I sat. One was here, the other was back to my left. I didn't recall and don't recall what was said that evening, though I know exactly the challenge I have. In fact, I asked my daughter about her commencement speaker, and she couldn't recall. So I did what any young-minded person does. I searched the internet for advice, and I found that there's actually a website that tells you how to prepare a commencement speech, as if those of us with higher education degrees can't find that information in our own minds. I also learned that there are transcripts and videos of commencement speeches from presidents, from athletes, from musicians, from innovators, from scientists, from doctors and lawyers, most importantly from Will Ferrell, Jim Carrey, Ellen, Conan, Jimmy Fallon, and Tina Fey. And I found they're actually all quite interesting in their own right. Some go on and on, which I will try not to do. I also learned that my presumption is there will be a video or a transcript from my remarks this evening, soon available on the internet. So you have a decision to make. Do I pay attention tonight? Do I not pay attention tonight and then Google search this speech tomorrow, which we know won't happen, which is your third option, which is I don't pay attention at all. For those of you that answer neither, I want to just ask you to walk through a story with me, because it's my story, and I thought if I capture your attention, maybe there's a few points I can offer this evening that might be of help. And I literally mean to speak to you individually. So I've watched your creative hats. There's a target back here, 6 or 7 rows back. A number of Bible verses in the back row. So those are people you should probably hang around with if you're trying to better yourself as a person. They seem to have some wisdom. So if you would, just listen to me, because the basis of my remarks were formed in 1997 in a restroom across from gate A26 at Atlanta's Hartsfield International Airport. The backstory is I was 32 years old at the time. I was married. My now graduate was 4 years old. My college student daughter was 1 year old. And I was commissioner of the Southland Conference, where I came to know Vic Schaefer, Mississippi State women's basketball coach, John Cohen, who's now your athletic director. I'll also tell you, I came to know Mike Bianco, who's Old Miss's baseball coach. A number of relationships that you will learn as your career develops. You see these people that you got to know in your 20s, and you have relationships that you've come to value. But I ended up on the floor of that restroom, an act I don't encourage for any reason. I wonder about some of you in your college experience, if you've shared that for reasons other than I. Mine was an atrial fibrillation. I became lightheaded while in that restroom, and without giving you the details, I found myself waking up on the restroom floor. What I want to do is share with you the mistakes that brought me to that point, because when you're getting up off a restroom floor, you're not in a good place in life. And you have invested too much time, and the people around you for whom you just clapped and thanked have invested too much money and probably sweat and tears to let your life go in that direction. And for me, there were 2 cardiologists, a number of tests, a whole bunch of doctors who basically said this to me as an outcome of that day in Atlanta. I wasn't living very well. I had a wife, 2 kids, a dog, a house, a great job in an early part of my life. I was 32 years old. And yet, I had worked myself to the point where I had to get off the floor in a restroom at gate A26 at Hartsfield Airport. I'd spent 6 years in higher education. Actually, I crammed 6 years of higher education into 7. You parents know exactly what I'm talking about, don't you? Because they figured out quicker than you that this is the best gig going, and they only got to go to work. But in those years of study, I'd studied biology, physiology, exercise science, nutrition, any number of courses about healthy living. And so I had this knowledge, but it hadn't translated into how I lived my life. In fact, I was missing so much that my wife received this phone call from a guy named Mike who worked for Delta Airlines. He called and he said, "Mrs. Sankey, this is Mike from Delta Airlines. Have you heard about your husband?" That began a very one-sided conversation from my wife towards me while I lay in an emergency room. If you go to work for an airline, you should add in that phone call, "Everything's okay, Mrs. Sankey, but you need to know this about your husband." My reality is I was driving myself too hard. I didn't eat right, I didn't exercise, I didn't get enough rest. I didn't get down on the floor to play with those kids that I love dearly. I had lost perspective. I was literally drinking 3 lattes a day to hold it together and keep myself awake, which there's a Seinfeld episode that suggests that's not a wise way to live. Mike Tyson, who has had problems over time, is attributed with a quote that says, "Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face." I got punched in the face that day. What I'd like for you is to avoid the punch in the face, but it may have already come. You may have had an expectation for your graduation date and you're a year later. You may have had a red F on a paper and it only happened once, but it caught your attention. You may have had financial issues that slowed you down. You may have had a loved one who let you down or someone who passed away. You have no idea what's going to happen to you tomorrow, much like I had no idea I was going to stay in that Holiday Inn Express last night. But here's a quote from a guy named Chuck Swindoll, who was president of Dallas Theological Seminary. He said very simply, "The longer I live, the more I'm convinced that life is 10% what happens to me and 90% how I react to it." That's actually a philosophy that you can track back to ancient Greece in the 1st century. There's no textbook, there's no guest lecturer, there's no class I could find that solved my problem, and so I had to choose how I react. And what I did is I began to pursue conversations with people. And I'm going to say this twice tonight. When I was young, all we did was watch TV. When my parents were young, all they did was listen to rock and roll. Now that you're young, you just look at your phones all the time. We all have our faults despite the generation. Let me just encourage you for a few moments, stop looking at your phone. It may be today. It'd be great if it was right now. Maybe tomorrow. Because I want you to know that I spent 6 months visiting with corporate leaders in Dallas where I live, asking them, how do you balance your family and your work? How do you make it work? And I went through this exercise. I had this great set of notes, and then I walked through a bookstore and I found a book called The Life You've Always Wanted by a guy named John Ortberg. Now, when you're in the state I was in, a book entitled The Life You've Always Wanted captures your attention because I didn't need to go back to that restroom floor yet again. I had been awakened by that event. I started reading that book, and just a few chapters in, I read these sentences, and I'm going to quote them for you. "A balanced lifestyle is not an adequate goal to which to devote our lives. The problem with that goal is not that it is too difficult, but that it is too slight. We're chasing the wrong thing in balance." And you can imagine how that stuck with me. I had spent months trying to figure out how to balance the two sides of my life, and what I determined was there's a lot more going on. Each of us are much deeper than simply work and family, or whatever two items you can think in your own mind. For me, I'm a son, I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a brother. If you have ever attended the Southeastern Conference football game, you have probably commented on the officiating and wondered, who is the commissioner of this conference? That's me. I'm a neighbor, I'm a friend. I'm a person focused on how faith informs his life, and I serve on the board of a nonprofit organization trying to bring fresh water to people in need around the globe. That's 8 or 9 aspects of my life, and it means that balance is best left to a seesaw on a playground. What you have to figure out are the values that inform how you will live and the priorities you derive from those values. The principles that I established meant that I could say no to things and yes. I might miss a family event, I might not be home for dinner, I would still work hard, but I avoided distractions. I avoided behaviors that were destructive because in advance I said I'm not going to do certain things. And actually I've carried around since 2002 a little plastic card that you can't see, but in the front row you can tell them he actually has a plastic card, right? And on this plastic card, there are 10 things by which I live, and I'm going to share them with you. The first one is live honorably. You are going to be challenged, maybe the first day of work, maybe the first day of grad school, with how will you live and how will you conduct yourselves. Don't sacrifice your career or a travel expense report to get an extra $50. It's not worth it. Those are the ethical lessons that some miss that you need to know in advance. Number 2, live a quiet life. I'm up in front, but you know what? It's not about me, it's about you. Number 3, live within my means. If I can encourage young people in any way these days, you may have student loans. I had student loans. From this point forward, eliminate every bit of debt in your life, because money shouldn't lead you. It should follow what you do. Don't take the job just because of the salary. Take the job because you will be challenged in what you do. It will force you to grow, and it will cause you to learn. And that leads to the next opportunity, and eventually the money follows. Number 4, laugh often. Go find opportunities to laugh. It's good for you from a health standpoint. Number 5, your objective every day should be to make each day a masterpiece. It's a philosophy of UCLA's former basketball coach, John Wooden. Before you go to bed tonight, ask yourself, did I meet that objective? Was today a masterpiece? I'm speaking in front of you, so I'm checking that box. I've never done this before. This is my masterpiece. Number 6, when you go to work or go to grad school, whatever it may be, I want to mind my own business. Mind your own business. Don't worry about your colleague's title, their salary, the rumor that floats around. The challenge for you is number 7, and that's to be diligent in what you do. To be so passionate about your career that you wake up every morning ready to go to work. I've missed some family events. It's about those values that make those decisions. Number 8, associate with people who make you better and return the favor. And be careful about those relationships. Are they lifting you up or tearing you down? And when they start to become destructive, find the friends that build you up. Number 9, order my life for me to limit exposure to temptation. I decided a long time ago I wasn't going to cause hurt in my family's eyes. The decisions you make in advance are the easy decisions. The decisions in the moment are difficult. Lastly, be open to the needs of others. And let me finish with a focus on that statement. You have been trained to think here at Mississippi State. You've been trained to lead. Some of you have literally been trained to heal, or you'll now pursue that training. You've engaged in the learning process to accelerate yourself in life. You've entered in a stage of life we call adolescence, and you've now moved, or are about to move, into adulthood. That should freak you out, quite frankly. Your parents are probably freaked out by it, because I know I am when my children move to that stage. But that's the great thing about life, is it ought to scare you a little bit. Maybe every day. That's how you make the masterpiece. Where are you going to work? Who are you going to be your friends? Where are you going to live? What kind of music are you going to listen to? The big things and the small things. And the big decisions follow the small decisions. But understand this, in our homes, in our communities, in our counties, in our states, in our country, and for those of you from, I understand, 21 countries across this world, you will leave this place and go back and affect the people around you. Be open to their needs. Bend a knee, lend a hand. Leadership understand that it's okay to have differences, but that we need to have a conversation. So put aside the phone, stop the Twitter, maybe for a few hours, maybe for a few days. Cease the Snapchat, let your friends worry about Facebook, you can forget about it, and look people in the eyes and have a conversation. Because my fear is when we lose the conversation and we lose the dialogue, we lose the opportunity to affect the people around us. You are educated to change the people around you. Thank you. Congratulations. I pray God's blessing upon each and every one of you. I hope you've learned something this evening that allows you to always go through the Atlanta airport, walk by gate A26, and never need emergency medical personnel. If you can meet that goal, you're going to have to find something else to search the internet for when it comes your time to speak at a commencement ceremony. Congratulations.
Stephen D. Lee scholars completed their baccalaureate degree programs, earning all A's. At this time, I would like to ask for the Stephen D. Lee scholars to please stand. Please join me in congratulating the students. Thank you and congratulations for the extraordinary accomplishment. Please be seated. We shall now proceed with the conferring of the doctoral degrees. Will the candidates for the various doctoral degrees please stand and remain standing? President Keenum, the names of the candidates appear in the printed program. On behalf of the members of the graduate faculty, I recommend that the appropriate doctoral degree be awarded to each candidate who has completed all of the requirements.
On the recommendation of the provost and the graduate faculty, and by the virtue of the president, by virtue of the authority vested in the president of Mississippi State University, I confer upon you the doctor's degree with all the rights and privileges pertaining thereto. Congratulations, doctors.
Will the candidates for the various doctoral degrees please come forward with your major professor to be hooded and congratulated by your academic dean, graduate dean Lori Bruce, and President Keenum.